And hello all my fellow nerds out there, this is Oracle Nerd Richie and welcome back to another video. This is going to be a bit of a different video because I just rediscovered my old Quotev profile. If you guys don't know what Quotev is, it's basically a website where you can go to and you can make like different quizzes or polls or stories or something like that. I've been a member of this site since 2013. And I've made quite a few stories, but I've also made I also have a collection of different creepy stories. I used to have a different collection, but for some reason that collection got copyrighted, and they didn't even ask me to delete the chapter. They just deleted my story asked me to delete my story upright. I couldn't do anything with it, so I had to make a new collection. And I have that same story in this collection, but it's more of a link to that story. But I thought I'd go around with this video and show you guys some of my old works. I made seriously, Guardian. The first story I ever made was Guardian's Tale: A Proxy Story. This was a story that I made back in 2013, and the last time I updated it was in 2017. So, which was like, I want to say 4 years ago. So, almost 5 years ago. So in all honesty, I didn't really know where I was going with the story. I actually did end up currently making a sequel to this. But I haven't updated that since May 14th, 2019, as you guys can see. So instead of showing you guys of my cringy works of when I was a 13-year-old, I was thinking maybe we can just go into this one, the Creepy Stories Collection 2. And this second collection here is where Basically, I don't really know what I'm going to do with this series, so I think I'm going to go ahead and read 3 scary stories in this collection. And this is just a collection of scary stories that I found strewn about the internet, and I compiled them all into this one thing. So I obviously have quite a few things like Tales at a Gas Station and I Live in a Town That Doesn't Exist. But let's go. But we're gonna do 3 scary stories, and we're gonna go with one of my favorites, The Smiling Man. This is gonna be the first of 3 scary stories, and I do give credit to the website where I found it on, but I don't know who the author is. So if any of you know who wrote the story, please let me know in the comments so that I can edit this story and credit them. So anyways, we're gonna go ahead and start reading. So let's start with that. About 5 years ago, I lived downtown in a major city of the US. I've always been a night person, so I would often find myself bored after my roommate, who was decidedly not a night person, went to sleep. To pass the time, I used to go for long walks and spend the time thinking. I spent 4 years like that, walking alone at night, and never once had a reason to feel afraid. I was always used to joke around with my roommate, and even the drug dealers in the city were polite. But all that changed in just a few minutes of one evening. It was a Wednesday, somewhere between 1 and 2 in the morning, and I was walking near a police patrolled park quite a ways from my apartment. It was a quiet night, and even for a weekend, with very little traffic and almost no one on foot. The park was, as it was in most nights, was completely empty. I turned down a short side street in order to loop back to my apartment when I first noticed him. At the far end of the street on my side, there was a silhouette of a man dancing. It was a strange dance, similar to a waltz, but he finished each box with an odd forward stride. I guess you could say he was dance walking, headed straight for me. Oh gosh. I need to get more sleep at night. Deciding he was probably drunk, I stepped as close as I could to the road and give him the majority of the sidewalk to pass me by. The closer he got, the more I realized how gracefully he was moving. He was very tall and lanky, wearing an old suit. He danced closer still, until I could make out his face. His eyes were open wide and wild. Head tilted back slightly, looking off at the sky. His mouth was formed into a painfully wide cartoon of a smile. Between the eyes and the smile, I decided to cross the street before he danced any closer. I took off my eyes off him to cross the empty street. As I reached the other side, I glanced back, and then stopped dead in my tracks. He had stopped dancing and was standing with one foot in the street, perfectly parallel to me. He was facing me, still looking skyward, smile still wide on his lips. I was completely and utterly unnerved by this. I started walking again, but kept my eyes on the man. He didn't move. Once I had put about half a block between us, gosh. Yeah, I'm probably not gonna edit. I'm probably not gonna get my editor to edit those yawns out. I'm probably gonna keep them in the video. Anyways, oh yeah, I turned away from him just a moment to watch the sidewalk in front of me. The sidewalk ahead of me were completely empty. Still unnerved, I looked back at where he was standing to find him gone. For the briefest of moments, I felt relieved until I noticed him. He had crossed the street and was now slightly crouched down. I couldn't tell for sure due to the distance and the shadows, but I was certain he was facing me. I had looked away from him for no more than 10 seconds, so it was clear he had to move fast. I was so shocked I stood there for some time, staring at him, and then he started moving towards me. He took giant, exaggerated tiptoe steps, as if he were a cartoon character sneaking up on someone, except he was moving very, very quickly. I like to say that at this point I wouldn't run away, or pull out my pepper spray, or my cell phone, or anything at all. But I didn't. I just stood there, completely frozen as the smiling man crept towards me. And then he stopped again, about a car's length away from me, still smiling his smile, still looking at the sky. When I finally found my voice, I blurted out with the first thing that came to mind. I meant to ask, "What do you want?" in an angry, commanding tone. But what came out was a whimper. What? Regardless of whether or not humans can smell fear, they can certainly hear it. I heard it in my own voice, and that only made me more afraid. But he didn't react to it at all. He just stood there, smiling. And then, after what felt like forever, he turned around very slowly and started dance-walking away. Just like that. Now when I turned my back to him again, I watched him go until he was far enough away to almost be out of sight. And then I realized something. He wasn't moving away anymore, nor was he dancing. I watched in horror, and the distant shape of him grew larger and larger. He was coming back my way, and this time he was running. I ran too. I ran until I was off the side road and back onto a better lit road with sparse traffic. Looking behind me, he was nowhere to be found. The rest of the way home, I kept glancing over my shoulder, always expecting to see his stupid smile, but he was never there. I lived in the city for 6 months after that night, and I never went out for another walk. There was something about that face that always haunted me. He didn't look drunk, he didn't look high, he looked completely and utterly insane, and that's a very, very scary thing to see. So yeah, that was the story. So yeah, that was the story of the Smiling Man. That's gonna be the first story that we read in this series. I'm not even sure I'm actually gonna make a series for this. But if you guys let me know in the comments below if you want to see more of me reading these kinds of stories, because it's November. I'm always still technically in a spooky mood, so I'm always up to reading scary stories at any time, you know? Okay, so this story is called The Romanian Knowledge Experiment. The author is unknown. I borrowed the thumbnail from a YouTube video. I have a link here in the story, but I'll leave a link in the description so you guys can go check out this creepy story collection yourself. And I also credit the website that I found it on. So anyways, let's start reading. In 1960, Alexandru Sift, a well-known biologist, traveled to the forest of how do you say that? Hold on, how do you say that? Hoya. Okay, so it's pronounced Hoya. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. The Hoya Bajiu, located in East Romania. The Hoya forest had the reputation of being a hotspot for paranormal activities. The main reason for Sif's motivation, he wrote many notes about his experiences there, but many were found burnt upon his death in 1993. The notes that's... Gosh. I think I need to get myself a drink. The notes that survived the detail of his experiments in the forest as subjects. In every one of his notes ended by saying, "Knowledge is harmful, ignorance is bliss." 10 years later, the Romanian government developed interest in the few notes that survived, so they sought to recreate his experiments. 3 men volunteered for it. They were told this was simply to see how an average person would manage to travel in a foreign territory, using only a compass and a light source. Of course, they were lies, so no sane man would ever volunteer if they knew what awaited them. They were also told there would be a substantial reward should they succeed. The first test subject was brought by helicopter to the west zone of the forest at midnight. He carried with him a backpack, food, water, a compass, and an oil lantern, with enough oil to last until morning. He was instructed to keep moving east until he hit a road, which would lead him to a cabin where a few government agents awaited him. He was also told to stop every 30 minutes to record any and all events in a sheet of paper. He arrived at the cabin at 2 a.m. He handed the sheet to the agents and was driven to a nearby city where he was handed the reward. His sheet read the following: 30 minutes in, I stopped at a nearby creek to rest and eat. And being in a forest at night with only oil lantern was a source of light really managed to scare the hell out of me. I thought I kept seeing more shadows than there actually were. 1 a.m. I stopped at a little clearing to change the oil. I swear, there must be something out there following me. I can almost be sure it was a shadow that wasn't from a tree. Maybe an animal? 1:30 a.m. Now I am definitely freaked out. I saw something staring at me in the distance. I only managed to see its silhouette, but as soon as it looked at it, it vanished. I'm starting to second doubt this experiment. 1:55 a.m. I'm on the road. I can see the cabin from here. That thing from before kept following me. The more I walked, the closer it got closer. Thankfully, I haven't seen it for a while, so I figured I'll just get to the cabin without any more delays. The first subject remained alarmed for a few days, but soon returned to a calm state. The second test subject was deployed in the same spot as the previous one on the following night. He had the exact same gear, except instead of an oil lantern, he had an infrared camera. Ooh, I really like infrared, honestly. It's one of my favorites. I think infrared cameras detect heat signatures. I think that's what they're for, right? He arrived at the cabin around 5 a.m. The agent noticed he was physically and psychologically shaken. He was panting and crying in fear. His sheet read the following: 30 minutes in. This camera really doesn't help me navigate. I even fell a few times because of it. Almost everything I see is blue and black. Oh, okay. Except for the occasional red spot of an animal or bird. Okay, so that makes sense. 1 a.m. I don't know what the fuck you guys put out here with me, but it's not funny. I took a break to drink some water when I heard a rattle coming from deep within the woods. I took my camera to see what it was, but I can be sure it was no animal. It was big, but hunched over. I couldn't make out its details, since it was glowing bright red. I slowly walked away from it, never losing it out of my sight, even though it stayed completely immobile. I found a small ditch to hide in. I guess it was better that right here than out in the open. I'll quicken up my pace. The faster I get out of here, the better. 4:30 a.m. I'm sorry for not writing more frequently. I just never had the chance. Shortly after the last entry, I heard it walking towards me. I hid in a small cave and waited for it to pass. It took so long because of that. It didn't leave me alone. I'll probably not write anything else until I get to safety. The last thing I want is to be surprised by that thing while my guard is down. The second test subject was visibly stressed and was taken to a psychologist for 3 months. The third subject never came back. He was deployed in the same spot on the next night. He had the same gear except he had a night vision camera. When the agents were leaving the shack, they noticed a worn and ripped piece of paper on their doorstep. It had only one entry. It read the following: 5 minutes in. If you find this, please tell my family I love them. These are maybe my final words. After I couldn't see the helicopter anymore, I turned the camera to check my surroundings. I can see it 20 meters in front of me. It doesn't look like it doesn't move as I rate this. It doesn't even blink. It has no eyelids. It's higher than any human or bear I've ever encountered. It's hunched over like a gorilla, supporting its weight on the extremities of its limbs. I can't even call those things hands. It has fish-like eyes, no pupils, pure engulfing darkness. Oh god, it's tearing down the trees as it moves. After the conclusion of the experiment, the Romanian government placed an electrified fence that guards the towers. And guard towers surrounding the Haui Basio forest. They made sure not to let anyone in or out. Moral of that story is don't go exploring forests you don't know about. Especially if they're haunted forests. Because in my opinion, sure, you might get a couple paranormal things here and there. You might notice, oh, there's some spooky stuff going on here, let's investigate. That might not be a good idea to investigate a haunted forest. Because, trust me, it's never a good idea. Oh god, I'm getting so tired. We'll do one more story and then I'll call it a video. Okay, so this last story that I'm gonna read is called The Portraits. I found this thumbnail. I found this image as a thumbnail for a YouTube video, and again, I'll try to find a link to the video so that you guys could so you guys can go check out these stories yourself, because the YouTube version of these videos are actually fully animated by someone. We don't know who the author is of the story. So again, if any of you know who the author is, please comment it down so I can credit who they are. Anyways, let's go ahead and start reading. This is gonna be probably the shortest story out of the three, but it's actually very spooky. So let's get reading. There was a hunter in the woods who, after a long day of hunting, was in the middle of an immense forest. It was getting dark, and having lost his bearings, he decided to head one direction until he was clear of the increasingly oppressive foliage. After what seemed like hours, he came across a cabin in a small clearing. Realizing how dark it had grown, he decided to see if he could stay there for the night. He approached and found the door ajar. Nobody was inside. The hunter flopped down on a single bed and decided to explain himself to the owner in the morning. As he looked around the inside of the cabin, he was surprised to see the walls were adorned by several portraits, all painted in incredible detail. Without exception, they appeared to be staring down at him, their features twisted into looks of hatred and malice. Staring back, he grew increasingly uncomfortable. Making a conceited effort to ignore the many hateful faces, he turned to face the wall and, exhausted as he fell into a restless sleep. The next morning, the hunter awoke. He turned, blinking in unsuspecting sunlight. Looking up, he discovered that the cabin had no portraits, only windows. My god, So either somebody moved the portraits off the windows, so there are like three options. Somebody came in and moved the portraits. 2, so the portraits he was hallucinating them and the portraits never there. Or 3, the portraits moved on their own. Or it could be a fourth option. People were actually looking in on him from windows, and that they actually were windows. But given how dark the cabin probably was, it probably seemed very unlikely it was the fourth option. So it was probably that the portraits moved on their own, or they disappeared or something. And honestly, that's pretty scary. In my opinion, that's probably one of the scariest things ever. Like, Like you see one thing when you're about to sleep, then you go to sleep, you wake up the next morning, and it's suddenly gone. Where did it go? If that ever happens to you, just get out of there. Just leave. Anyways, that's gonna do it for this video. I guess I'm not sure if I'm gonna be turning this into a series, but if I ever do turn it into a series, I'll let you guys know about it. So anyways, thank you so much for watching this video. Leave a like, leave a comment on what your favorite story was out of the three, and I'll be sure to leave links in the description so you can go and listen to the stories yourselves, and you can read them as well. And be sure to subscribe and click the bell so you don't miss a single notification. And I'll see all of you in the next video. Goodbye.